everybody, welcome back. In this part of the video, we're going to be describing to you and explaining to you all the different components of these two guns, and of course the new blank and forend that we're going to have to create the new stock and forend out of. Brandon's done a lot of work, a lot of technical work in identifying the different characteristics and different idiosyncrasies and all the different little details, all the really important details that we needed to do with regards to weights, balances, lengths, breadths, whatever. So I'm going to let Brandon take over from here and explain to you in his own words what he's accomplished from now and why and what he needs to do from here forward. So Brandon, why don't you let us know what you think.
Okay, absolutely. So what we have here is we have my Caesar Guerini Essex Gold Limited in a 32-inch configuration. It has extended extreme titanium chokes on it with a eye dominant sight on it as well. I'll get into a little bit of why I shoot that a little later. On this side we have my next gun, which will be a K80 Parkour setup. It's a Sewell scroll that's case color hardened, and it's also in a 34-inch Parkour barrel setup. So part of my trepidation of switching guns is also going to a different barrel length. And why I want to take a holistic approach is to make sure that the sight pictures match up as best as they can to this also. Andrew and I talk a lot about, and we have a term for it called like the science of the feel. I'm a very analytically based shooter, but when it comes to my gun, I care a lot about the weight and the balance and the feel of the gun. And in my mind, there's some analytics and some science behind it. So we've taken the time to weigh a lot of these components, and we'll get into the percentages and specific weights a little further on. But what I really wanted to do with that is to get some numbers on the feel of the gun in terms of the proportions of the receiver to the overall weight, to the stock, to the overall weight, to the barrel weights, to the overall weight of the gun. And I've been pleasantly surprised with some of my findings here that these guns are set up very similar from the factory. So within a couple percentage points, most of the components that I weighed versus their overall weight are very similar. The biggest difference is the Krieghoff is a half a pound lighter, even though it has a longer barrel configuration, which in my mind, the reduced weight, and again, we don't know the exact weight because we don't know what the wood's going to be, but it will be less than my Guerini is. I will be able to move the gun more freely, but I don't want to lose the harmonics of the gun. I don't want to lose the ability to shoot bigger shells and take less recoil, which we have found in the Guerini. So that's the biggest, component of this for me, is to make sure that all the things I like about this in terms of being able to shoot big shells with little felt recoil, with good balance, with good maneuverability, all transfers over, and if not, gets better in this side. So that's where I'm going to send it back to Andrew a little bit to talk about some of the components and the way we designed this gun, and how we're going to take those on to this gun using that blank over there.
Okay, everybody. First thing I want to talk about is the forend. Before I say anything about that, I just want to make you aware of the work we did in customizing the Guerini to fit him initially and to make it absolutely perfect for him in fit and feel. We had to do a lot of changes from the factory. And this is quite normal. Most people will need something a little bit different because we're not all the same. So in this case, first thing Brandon asked for was a longer forend. The original factory forend was a little short for him, and so what he found is when he rested his hand on the forend as he mounted the gun, his fingers were hanging over and they were touching the barrel and stuff, and he just didn't want to have that. So we created a much longer forend for him, and as you can see, if I lay these two together, you can see the difference. There's a good couple of inches longer at the end. The other thing we also did is we changed the shape. I'm very aware of anatomics and repeatability with my background. In fact, I'm intimately aware of them. And so I recommended a style and a shape to Brandon. He wanted to have a little bit more meat on it, obviously a little bit longer. And he wasn't quite happy about how his fingers felt when he actually cradled the gun. He felt like he was having to grip the gun too much instead of it just sitting there. So I said, okay, We're going to go change that. So what it is, I came up with this shape, which is not unique. It is unique to this gun, but this shape has been around for a long, long time. However, we did subtly change it and obviously fitted it perfectly for his hands. And I'll let Brandon explain to you at a later date why and what and how about this shape and how it affects him and helps him shoot better. So anyway, that was the two main things we did with that. The other thing I had to do was I had to then recreate the mechanism inside here for the release, because obviously the release mechanism wasn't long enough. So we made a custom system that went inside there and attached to the original factory stuff. I'm not saying to the rest of the world that you need to go this route, but if you do need to, for some reason, we can make it work. All right. So unlike the new gun, which is the Krieghoff, has a release latch midway down the forend, it won't affect anything, and so this will be a relatively easy thing to do this time. This is quite a complicated system to figure out the first time we went through it, and it took a lot of work. However, we now have the shape and the size and the style that we need. All we need to do is then just morph it on this, and the good thing is that with the release being midway down and underneath it, it doesn't affect anything there. So it'll be a pretty easy thing to do. The next thing I want to talk about is the stock. We also made a lot of changes to the original factory stock because they needed to be. You know, there are people my size, and I'm a tiny little guy, about the size of a jockey, and then you've got Brandon here who is as tall as they come. With those differences in our physiques, no gun off the rack is going to fit either one of us. You know, so this is a common knowledge thing now, and the good thing is that we have the knowledge and the experience and the wherewithal to actually modify these factory guns to fit yourself, the individual shooting, and so on and so forth. But anyway, we went a step further with this. We recreated a new stock that had just about every dimension changed in here, from palm swell to grip angle to grip depth to stock shape to the width, the depth. All of the above was all taken into consideration and altered subtly, so it would custom fit Brandon and so on and so forth, and give him the easiest possible way to go through his sports. So we're now going to take the knowledge we've already created over the last 18 months, and we're going to change them up a little bit again, because Brandon's now realized, as we've gone this year and a half travel, that he'd like to change the original system that we created for him subtly, and they're going to be small changes to benefit him even more. I couldn't have told him how to do this stuff. He had to come to me with this information, because I'm not the person shooting the gun. I'm not the person experiencing it. My thought's different to his. My field's different to his. So he worked this out on his own and came back to me and said, "All right, Andrew, we're going to go and do this project, but we're not going to copy this directly. We're going to make subtle changes, and I'll let him tell you about that later." So really what we're doing with this now is we're now taking it and we're creating what we hope is absolute perfection in the end, with a gun that he will find relatively easy to transfer from one to the other. So the transition from one gun to the other, in this case, should be a relatively easy thing to do, because we've gained so much knowledge with each other, and I said where we're going. With somebody who I've never met before, client walks in the door, never met before, sometimes it can get a little bit more difficult, and it is what it is. But I think in this case now we should be able to make this relatively easy, and again make it a good viewing thing for you guys. So anyway, thank you very much. We'll be back with you next time with the next step. Thanks for joining us. Take care.